to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 21. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and blogger of Let's Talk Kids Health. As you know, the concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health and family wellness for kids and families everywhere. Every week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, remember, this is a previously recorded episode, but you'll still have the opportunity to post comments and questions. Use the hashtag replay so that way when we go back in, I can make sure that we answer every single question. And while you're watching this video, if you know somebody who might benefit from the episode, please don't be shy. Share. That's how we get this information out. And if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer, MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. Okay, so now on to this week's guest. Let's welcome Jeannie Marrugo. Jeannie was a full-time architect and has transformed into a full-time entrepreneur. She loves spending time with her Venezuelan husband and chasing her half-Latina daughters, Camila and Juliet. When she isn't working or with family, she loves cycling, camping, which seemed to have stopped after parenthood came, reading, shopping, watching movies, and running the business she co-founded with her mom, Cafe Baby. Thank you so much, Jeannie, for coming today and
Thank you for
spending some
having
time.
me.
Yeah, I'm so
Absolutely.
excited to have you. So before we get started, your story is so phenomenal. Like the fact that you were in a totally unrelated field and now running this business. Like, how did you go from architect to opening up Cafe Baby and being an entrepreneur? Like, how did you make
Yeah,
that leap?
not where I thought I would be 15 years ago, but I love it. um, so I was in the architecture field for about 10 years in between grad school and full time. And so when we were pregnant with our first daughter, Camila, I knew I wanted to make her baby food, but I knew I didn't have time to do it. So I started to look into local alternatives to see what else was out there besides what was sitting on the grocery store shelf. And there was nothing. Like all I had was either a grocery store or make it myself. And I could barely keep up with what was going on then, let alone spending hours in the kitchen making baby food. And it's more than just making baby food, it's figuring out what they can have at different stages and when to start. And there's a lot of research that goes into starting a baby on solids. So I started to think about a business that could make the food for me and bring it to my doorstep. And my mom and I had always wanted to start a business together. We just didn't know what it was. And so when I took that idea to her, she's like, yeah, I think we could make that work. So we immediately went into down the rabbit hole to figure out how to start a business, how to start a food business, how to get licensing to start it, all the requirements that goes into it. We needed a commercial kitchen since we were going to sell online. So what that was going to look like and everything. So here we are. We're turning 5 next month. So it's been a long and very fulfilling journey.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that is the entrepreneurial spirit, if I have to say one. The fact that you come up with this idea and you don't let anything get in your way of like figuring it out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, no. Well, before we leave that, I kind of want to just follow up with you on something that you said. You said that there was either just store-bought, like, right, food that you could get off the shelf or making it yourself. What was it about the store-bought that you were just not happy with?
We actually have a really good comparison picture on our website, on our homepage. So just take a look at that and you'll see it. So, it's the color,
Uh-huh.
the texture, the taste, the process. I mean, it's everything. I don't really like processed foods for my husband or myself, let alone our children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, if you open a bottle or a jar of commercially processed baby food, even the organic, it's like soup, and like the green beans are brown, and the like even the fruits don't look very appetizing. But then when we started to do research about how commercially processed baby food is made, they cook that food like at really high temperatures. It cooks all the nutrients out, and that's to preserve the shelf life so it can sit on the grocery store shelf for 2 years. So some of that
Mm.
food that people are feeding their babies it was made before they were even conceived.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
when
I
you
was
say it
like,
that
no
way.
thanks.
Oh.
No thanks.
Oh goodness. Well, speaking from my perspective, my kids are like 11 and 14 now.
Hmm.
I did spend time making baby food, but that was just because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it because I wanted, be the best mom I can be,
Yeah.
and I'm a pediatrician, and I should have probably looked more into that, but I just thought that was something that I wanted to do,
Hmm.
and for my child, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work though.
Yeah, it's so
Uh,
much work.
yeah, and you were saying too, like there's a science behind how to introduce which foods when, and so you sort of wanted to take that guesswork out of it for
Hmm.
families?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hear that from parents all the time. Like we either hear that story that you just said, I
Uh-huh.
want to make my food, but I don't have time to do it, or I'm a new mom, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me? Like I was just on the phone with a customer at the store last week, and she's like, I came in last week and bought your food, and I really don't know what I'm doing. So can you explain to me what I'm supposed to do? So it's just
Oh.
crazy because we Cafe Babies kind of turned into a consulting business too, which we never saw that happening. But it's awesome. We love helping parents and first time moms and dads trying to figure out what they're doing.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
you're growing and you're evolving to meet the demand. So
Hmm.
that's really awesome. Well, so why don't we just jump on in, okay?
Yeah.
So I guess the first question is, why is healthy eating important, especially during infancy?
So actually, this question can be backtracked to pregnancy. So
Hmm.
healthy eating is actually important from pregnancy because you're actually forming your baby's palate by what you're putting in your body. So there is research that suggests that your amniotic fluid can taste like whatever you eat. So it's really important to feed your baby healthy foods while they're still cooking in the oven.
Yes.
But even when it's time for baby to start solid, so their palate is like it's an empty plate. Like you are in charge of forming that baby's palate, and it's a big responsibility. And you want to make sure that you are giving them a wide range of flavors, textures, because that really does help later on with the foods that they'll eat. So, and there's also this thing called the first 1,000 days of a baby's life. So that starts from when you're pregnant all the way up until they're 2. And research suggests that this 1,000 days will form the foundation of their eating for the rest of their life. So it's really important to teach your kids how to eat healthy so they can form a lifetime of healthy habits. So it's a big responsibility,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it because I mean it can affect the world. Like if you think about it at a big scale, if we work hard during the first couple of years, we could change the course of how the whole world eats, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
But we can
absolutely.
bring it back down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I love about what you just said, I mean, uh, I know that's a lot of pressure to those of you listening or thinking, "Oh gosh, did I do it all wrong?" But take heed, right? Because I think this is kind of the first foray into parenting, right? Like
Hmm.
anything that we do for our kids, we do it out of love. We do it
Hmm.
because we want to nurture them. But we have such an awesome responsibility of role modeling these
Hmm.
healthy behaviors, and we can influence that. And as you said, an infant's palate is really like a blank slate, and you can really what you do now can really shape their healthy habits for the future.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really wonderful.
Blank slate,
And
that's what I
scary.
mean. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
scary. I think I said empty plate. I meant to
Empty
say
plate.
a
Yes.
blank. Yeah, whatever you said.
A blank slate. Blank
Blank
slate.
slate. That's
Yeah.
what I meant to say.
Yeah. You were thinking about the eating analogy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, and not to kind of go off topic, but I just find this topic really fascinating because, and we're going to get to this question later about picky eating and all of that, and if you're modeling that you don't like vegetables and then you don't
Hmm.
serve it, and then your kids, is that fair that
Yeah.
you ask them to do, right?
Yeah.
But I just have also been fascinated about like eating habits of other children in other cultures too. Like I
Hmm.
am like I love everything French, and I've read a couple of the books about how, the kids in school, like nutrition and eating is such a big piece of their
Hmm.
curriculum at
Yeah.
an early age to accept those tastes and the different foods and the different offerings. It like sort of puts what we do in the American system to
To
shame. I mean,
shame.
yeah.
Shame.
Oh, and then and
Yes.
then and then, like when we were in France, visiting, and I would be like looking around, and these young kids would sit for hours having multiple courses and
Hmm.
not complain. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing.
Yeah, I know. And actually, my husband and I have been talking about this a lot lately. So, as you said earlier, he's from Venezuela. So, we have two very different cultures in our house. So, we have like this weird American Venezuelan culture in our house. It's really beautiful. But um, it's the same thing in Venezuela too. Like the kids there, they eat such a like a more well-rounded diet than kids do in America. And I think that it has to do with the availability of fresh foods in Venezuela. Like
Mm.
it's easy to, go, you can find fruit around the corner, you can find vegetables, and they don't eat hardly any processed foods. Like actually all of his family have had stomach problems when they've moved, like shortly after they've come to the United States, because the food is just so much more processed and not as natural as it is in Venezuela. So it's really interesting when a society makes healthy eating and eating as a family, they prioritize eating so much more than we do here. I wish that it wasn't like that here.
Yeah, yeah, or asking our youngsters to like cram lunch in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is very different, to say the
Yeah.
least. So,
No, and my husband he has a lot of French coworkers, and actually he has a lot of European coworkers, and you will never find a European eating at a meeting. Like they always take their lunch, they eat it, they don't work during lunch, they don't talk to anybody. It's like lunch is sacred. They will work before and after lunch, and then all the Americans are like on the phone eating, or they're working through their lunch. It's like we just don't prioritize mealtime here
I know.
because
And
of the
driving while we're eating, you know?
yes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Well, not that's a whole other subject that
it
we can
sure is.
totally can get into, and maybe we should bring your hubby on at some point and like have this discussion about food and culture, because I think that is so fascinating.
Yeah, he would love that.
But I think so to tie off that first question, it's really important because what you're doing from the get-go is helping your child sort of build their palate,
Hmm.
modeling healthy habits. Anything else you want to add about why it's important to start in preconception, like prenatally and then into infancy?
Yeah, I think another thing that's important is to introduce your baby to different spices. Some people think that it's not okay to put spices in your baby food. It is totally fine. So that also helps to build a baby's palate and kind of expand their flavor. Um, what's the word I'm trying to say? Their aversion to flavor. If you can add spices into their baby food, and we actually have a video on our Instagram about different spices that you can add into your baby food to start off with.
Hmm. Like
But like
what are
my oldest was eating Indian food before she was a year. I mean, I love you can never have enough flavor in this house. We love different flavors.
So, we need to ask, what are those spices? Like, do you remember a couple of those that you can share? Like, if interested parents want to start spicing up a little bit of their baby's food?
Yeah, so a couple of them are basil, garlic powder, cumin, dill, rosemary, and then we also have a video on our Instagram that it gives like I think 9 or 10 flavors that you can add to your baby food. But a really important thing is to limit salt. You don't want to add salt to your baby's diet just because it's hard for their little systems to process salt. I mean, it's hard for
Wow.
adults' systems to process a lot of salt, let alone babies.
Right, right. Thank you for sharing that. And I will definitely link to that video on the show notes. But yeah, I think a lot of those I would not have even thought of adding.
I
But
know.
yeah, I love it though. That's great. And I love that story about your daughter already eating Indian food before she was one. That's
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
We love Indian food.
We do too. Okay, so, there's this whole thing about the obesity epidemic. And,
Hmm.
again, not bringing it back to culture, but here we go. We're going to go there. Fast food, portion sizes, all of that. So I have to ask this question, and I'm sure you're getting this a lot too from the customers that you have. Like, why is moderation so important? Whether it be, like you said, salt or other things, like, why is this such a big thing to consider?
Yeah, so moderation is important on so many levels. And I like myself, I'm a big supporter of eating in moderation because I hate dieting. It's not effective. Um, and it's just not fun to like not have fun things like ice cream and stuff like that. So that translates to your kids too. If you limit everything they eat, then you run the risk of them hiding or sneaking food. They're going to be around other kids who are eating bad things too. And while we want to shield them from all those foods, we also do need to let them be children and have a sweet treat every once in a while. So it's just really important to teach your kids at an early age what healthy eating is as a lifestyle, not as a quick fix to lose weight, not as anything else, but this is how we should eat and to keep our bodies healthy and fueled. So the 90-10 rule is a really good standard to live by. So 90% of the time you're eating healthy foods, proteins, fruits, vegetables, and then 10% of the time let them have a cookie or ice cream or a sweet treat. And hopefully that will make them have a better relationship with food and really understand that like those are treats. They're not anything but that. 90% of the time we're eating healthy foods and we can have treats every once in a while.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that 90-10 rule. And I think that's an easy thing to remember,
Hmm.
especially if you're like, oh, the one pearl from this show is the 90-10 rule. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's something that anybody could sort of take it and run with. But, I think it be safe to say that even natural foods, healthy foods, can have a lot of natural sugar too,
Hmm.
right? And sweetness. So it's not like you're kind of, um, keeping that out of your child's diet in any way. But I love that what you just said about like it's not necessarily teaching them for a quick fix. It's just a lifestyle
Hmm.
and having that lens of, this is just how we take care of our bodies.
Hmm. That's what our
Yeah.
bodies need.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so I know that so many parents out there struggle with picky eaters. I mean, I get a lot of questions about this in my private practice. I'm sure you get some of that. Like, how do I avoid a picky eater? Like, do you have like some tips on for parents, like what not to do so that
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's going to happen. um, it For us, it started happening around 16 months with our first, and then like 12 or 13 months with our second. I mean, our second one would eat anything I put in front of her until about 12 to 13 months. And the thing that we have to remember is that we as adults have foods that we don't like.
Mhm.
So we need to extend that grace to our children and just accept the fact that there might be foods that they don't like, but we still have the responsibility to keep it in front of them. We have the responsibility to expose them to many different foods, and we also have the responsibility to model healthy eating for our kids. Your kids will eat exactly how you eat. So it's very important to model healthy eating. Now, when your kids start having aversions to different foods, don't give up, especially if it starts happening early on, especially when your baby's starting solids. Just remember it could take 10 to 15 times for a baby to accept a new food. And we tell parents that all the time because we always hear, oh, they tried peas and they spit their tongue out. They don't like it. Well, it was their first time trying it. Of course, they probably didn't like it, but that doesn't mean you give up. You just keep trying. And that doesn't mean shove the food down the kid's throat. And I'll get to that in a minute, but you just keep trying and keep exposing them to the foods. Um, so what you don't want to do is lose your cool during mealtime. And I have to admit, I was horrible at that with our first because our first went through a period of time. It was like 2 years, I want to say, where it wasn't like a picky eating problem. It was an attention problem. So she would sit there for 45 minutes and just not eat anything. And I would get so frustrated with her that she wasn't eating. And you don't want to lose your cool at mealtime because that could have a lifelong effect of your kid's relationship with food. It could make them have um, a negative feeling towards food. So just make sure you keep that cool. And when she wouldn't eat, I would just say, okay, we're done. And the thing with kids is they'll eat when they're hungry. So that's really important to remember to not make them finish their plate because they'll stop, and you want them to have a natural cue to stop eating.
Mm-hmm.
If you force feed them or make them finish their meal, it could cause them to overeat later. So as hard as it is, try not to have like a clean your plate rule in your house. Just let them stop eating when they're done.
Mm-hmm.
In our house, you do not eat after dinner. Like if you don't eat what's on your plate, that's your choice, and that's all you get for the rest of the night. So it's also really important to have boundaries with mealtime and a structure around mealtime. If you're not going to eat when everybody else eats, then you don't eat for the rest of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I would say if you start having a lot of problems with this, maybe seek out some help with a feeding therapist. We actually have a really great webinar on our website called it's Picky Eater versus a Problem Feeder. And
Mm.
it gives the signs when you have a picky eater versus a problem feeder. And if your child exhibits some of the symptoms of a problem feeder, then it's probably time to look into a feeding therapist. But that's on our website. That's a really great webinar with a pediatric, or she's a speech language pathologist.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so we'll definitely put that resource in the show notes too. So thank you so much for mentioning that because I think what you said there was so much there.
Sorry.
Well, no, 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 but this is great. I love it. That's what I hope when I bring guests on, that like every episode is amazing and people learn so much. So let me just make sure I got this down. So don't give up because kids,
Yes.
they're going to naturally become a little bit picky, and that's okay because they're going to form their own opinions. But you said don't give up. Introduce a food at least 10 to 15 times,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe change it up a little bit here or there, but like keep your cool when you're offering food. Have a boundary. So it's not like you're going to quickly say, okay, fine, but then cook something else for the
Mm-hmm.
child, right?
Yeah,
Because
you're
you
not
also,
you're not a short order cook.
yeah, not a short order to cook. You also said that kids will eat until they're full, and you want to maintain that natural cue that they're
Yes,
full,
that's very
right?
important.
Yep. And then you said something along the lines of, kids will, they'll eat until they're full. And we need to just sort of have that rule like, okay, well, this is dinner and there's no further eating.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend to your clients, like if a child just flat out refuses, to just, okay, that's all right, but then when you're hungry, offer that again, that plate again, or just wait to the next meal, or what do you suggest there?
You could offer the plate again. You could offer it in a different form.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this goes for like if you figure out your kid doesn't like a certain vegetable, well, you could cook it a different way, or you could serve it with a different dipping sauce, or just serve it in a different way than you served it the first time.
Yeah.
And that might help.
Yeah. And then what have you, and again, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to sort of approach this issue.
So many
So
ways.
there's so many ways, and sometimes you just have to think outside of the box too.
Yeah.
But like, what would you say to parents who themselves are like have a restricted palate, uh, do you find that they should be offering stand like certain foods just because, or and then they not eat it? I mean, like what do you think? What do you say
Yeah,
to that?
that's really hard. I wish my mom were here so she could answer this because she's a really picky eater, and that's part of the reason why she loves what she does at Cafe Baby, because she feels like she can help kids not be
Oh.
healthy by cooking a lot of different foods for them to eat. Um, I would say if you have a restricted palate yourself, do your research for the foods that your kid should be eating at however old your child is,
Hmm.
and just try to come up with different foods to feed them, or look at like companies like Cafe Baby and order meals that are already prepared so you don't have to do your research. We have a lot of customers who have that story, and that's why they buy from us, because they want to expose them to foods that they don't eat themselves. So yeah, either do your research and figure out what your kids should be eating at whatever age they are, or look into some sort of meal delivery service who can just make the food for you.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's a really fascinating thing that you just said. Like I love that part of your what your company can offer is that you've done the research of
Hmm.
what the science says and when the timing of things should be. So you sort of take that guesswork out
Yes.
for
Yep.
families, which is a big time issue. And quite frankly, I think a lot of parents are really busy and maybe sleep deprived. So like this is
Yep.
awesome that you do that. I'm just curious, and again, has your mom been open to trying some of these foods that she's made? No.
No, so this happened a couple days ago. So we're actually
Yeah.
working on a dry mix for our lactation cookies, and we haven't even announced this to anybody. So this is our first time in public saying that we're working on this. So um, we're working on a lactation cookie dry mix to go into retailers, and she won't even try it because she knows that there's brewer's yeast and flaxseed in the cookies. You can't even taste it, but she knows that it's in there, and so she won't taste it.
Oh no.
So
No.
yeah, I'll eat anything.
Yeah.
I'll eat anything unless it's looking at me, or if it's an original form and I can't eat it. We were in Spain a couple of years ago, and they brought out this big squid on a plate and then took it back to chop it up. And I'm like, I can't eat that because I know what it just looks like.
No. Well, remember what you said earlier is like we all have our own thing,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right?
It's okay to not like certain foods, especially if
Yeah.
they're looking at you.
Yeah. So there you go. But yeah, that's really exciting. I love that it sounds like you guys are innovating all the time and
Yeah.
really, really growing your business. So that's amazing. And you heard it here.
You're the first
Oh
people.
my gosh. So I guess the next question is then, all right, so let's turn the table a little bit and
Okay.
let's talk about like things to do to promote healthy eating beyond toddlerhood. Because Cafe Baby, like, what's the clientele that you serve with that? Like,
So we started with breastfeeding moms and baby food, and then over the years we've expanded it. So when we were about a year into Cafe Baby, and we noticed that our first customers were outgrowing us, so that's when we introduced our Grabbies menu, which are like little finger foods. Those are great for baby-led weaning or for toddler food. And then towards the end of COVID, so end of 2020, we started working on a line of meal boxes for big kids. And
oh,
I mean, kids up to 6 or 7 could eat those. Those are big. They're probably that big. If I can get that in yeah.
yeah.
They're like 10-ounce servings. So those are big kid food. So breastfeeding moms all the way to big kid food.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'm gonna have to go check out your website again because
Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
and what's
great.
great about the meal box is it's not like most of our stuff is a la carte, and then
Hmm.
but these are like meals that are already put together. So you just pop them in the microwave and microwave them for like 3 minutes, and it's a whole meal.
Oh wow. That
Yeah,
that's convenient.
I know. That's why we did it. It's great for like if you're cooking something spicy and the kids won't like it, or they don't like what you cooked for whatever reason, you just pull those out and pop it in the microwave and done.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. Or if you're like, it's going to be a tight day and you've got a
Yes.
lot of just transition time and you're like, you still want them to have healthy food rather than go
Hmm.
to McDonald's,
Yep.
just go to Cafe Baby and get these awesome boxes, right? There you go. So again, these are like knowing and pre-planning. It sounds like is going to be an important tip that we share with families. Like thinking ahead of time. Do you advocate that, like meal planning,
Yes.
or yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Even myself, like I sit down once a week and I meal plan for the week. And it makes every day easier. So I don't have to think about what are we going to eat today? Oh, I already thought about that on Tuesday. So tonight we're having
Hmm.
whatever. So yeah, if you can find like an hour or even a half an hour a week to just sit down and think about what everybody's going to eat. And I know it's exhausting. I know I have to do it for four people and it's exhausting, but hopefully it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, and plus I found too that when I go and, put in an order for, either for myself going to the grocery, so I'm intentional about what I'm putting in the cart rather than just
Hmm.
willy-nilly putting in
Yes.
stuff, that we don't throw away as much food
Hmm.
too, which is so much better anyway. I feel really guilty if we end up having to throw away so much extra food that we just didn't get around to eating, and
Yeah.
so that's never a good thing. So any other tips though? Like how else can parents promote healthy eating?
Let's see. I think we've covered a lot through the episode. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I always try to keep healthy snacks on me just through the day, like if we're going to be gone, especially like if we go to the zoo. So that way we're not like forced to stop through the drive-through and get Lord knows what.
Yes.
Um, so making sure to stock up on healthy snacks at the grocery store so you're covered yourself through the week if you need an emergency backup. But I think we've covered a lot through the episode. We kind of jumped
Yeah,
the gun on some stuff.
yeah, we really did. I mean, again, I think the role modeling piece,
Hmm.
and pre-planning your food, preventing the need to have to run to like the quick, fast food restaurant to grab something, because we've all gotten there.
Yeah.
Our
Oh, yeah.
life is just crazy sometimes. But if you can, you always feel a little bit better if you can pre-plan, or looking for places like yourselves, Cafe Baby, and ordering and having the convenience of healthy food to provide
Hmm.
your child and your family.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like to do is making it a family affair and involving kids in meal planning or prep
Yes.
and cooking, because that's another way to model a lot of healthy
Hmm.
habits too.
Yeah. And it also exposes them to all the food that's going into their meal.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
And
Do you guys have your own like garden or anything like that? Because that's another way, right? So they could
yeah,
see.
yes, we do. And that's one of my favorite videos I have of our oldest. I think we had just harvested all of our carrots and she was like 2 years old and just standing there with a vegetable peeler, just peeling all the carrots
Oh,
so we could chop them up and freeze them. So yeah, actually that's another great way to expose them to more fruits and vegetables is to
yeah.
garden.
Yeah, and then they get to see where things come from
Hmm.
and they get pride in that and they hopefully they're more like inclined to taste it and
Hmm.
use it. Yeah. So this was a great episode. So I'm going to just ask for the purposes of our listeners, our watchers who are seeing this, um, how do people find out more about Cafe Baby and more about you? Are there social media platforms or website to go to?
Yeah, so our store is online. It's www.cafebabytogo.com. If you are in Indianapolis, we have a store on 86th Street across from Castleton, or oh my gosh, across from Costco in Castleton.
Uh-huh.
And then we're also on Facebook, and then we're on Instagram too, and it's Cafe Baby to Go.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I'm so thrilled for you and that you've been able to weather COVID and continue being
Yeah.
so, like in business doing really well. And it
Thank
sounds like
you.
developing new products and all the time.
Yeah.
So, oh, I just wish you so much continued luck. You are doing an amazing service for
Thank you.
families. And I really do hope that folks who are watching this episode are so inspired to check out your website and, and buy. So,
Yes,
well, thank you so much for spending time with me. And,
absolutely.
I just, like I said, maybe we'll talk about and invite your husband to come on and we
We
can
will.
have a chat about culture and food and, just healthy eating in general. So,
Yeah, he would love that.
well, thank you. And, next week's special guest is another friend of mine, Dr. Risa Davidson, who will be talking to us about direct primary care for pediatrics. So tune in. Again, we're always on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you see this episode or other episodes and you're like, hey, so and so needs to watch it, again, sharing is caring. Please do that.
Yes.
It is. And just a plug, because it is June, I am doing a June parenting book club. The book is Anxiety Relief for Kids by Dr. Bridget Flynn Walker, and it looks just like this. Oops, camera. Okay, there we go. I'm still working on that. But yeah, so more details on my blog Facebook page. Even if it's mid-June, please join us at any time because we would love to have you there. Okay, well, so again, thank you so much, Jeannie, for coming. And if you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, please feel free to reach out to me by sending me an email at letstalkkidshealth@gmail.com. Drop me a comment below or just message me on social media. And remember, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, to be alerted when I go live each week and follow my blog Facebook page. Thanks again, Jeannie.
Thank you for having me.